Hello everyone, myself Nerityajeet. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you all are doing great, guys. So, in previous video, we learned about conduction of nerve impulse, and today in this video, we continue this chapter with transmission of impulse. So, transmission of impulse is basically by synapses. So, in this topic, we learn about synapse. So, synapse is what it is junction between neuron to neuron junction. So let's get started. A nerve impulse is transmitted from one neuron to another through the junction called synapses. A synapse is formed by the membranes of a presynaptic neuron and a postsynaptic neuron. So synapse is or junction is formed by presynaptic and postsynaptic neuron. Pre, that is previous neuron and membrane, and so this is previous neuron and membrane, and this is post post neuron membrane. So connection between these presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron is synapse, and these membrane directly touch each other, or maybe not, which may or may not be separated by a gap called synaptic cleft. Gap called synaptic cleft. Here synaptic cleft is shown. This is synaptic cleft. The gap between pre and post synaptic membrane. There are two types of synapses, namely electrical synapse and chemical synapse. So, in case of electrical synapse, the membrane of pre and post synaptic neuron are in very close proximity. So, in case of electrical synapse, so in case of electric synapse, the pre and post synaptic neuron membrane is directly touch each other or in close proximity, or there is absence of synaptic cleft or the gap between these two neuron membrane. Electric current can flow directly from one neuron to the other across these synapses. So electric current, or basically the impulse. So impulse can flow directly from one neuron to other neuron, uh, directly, in case of electric synapse, because in electric synapse, uh, membrane are directly joined to each other, pre and post synaptic neuron, in very close proximity. Transmission of an impulse across electrical synapses is very similar to impulse conduction along a single new axon. So, in case of electric synapse, impulse transmission or impulse conduction is similar as impulse conduction in one neuron. Impulse transmission across an electrical synapse is always faster. So, at electric impulse conduction is faster at electrical synapse than that of a across chemical synapse. In chemical synapse, gap or synaptic cleft is present. Electrical synapses are rare in our system. Electrical synapses are rare in our system. At a chemical synapse, the membrane of pre and postsynaptic neurons are separated by a fluid-filled space called synaptic cleft. In this diagram, synaptic cleft is shown as here. Do you know how the presynaptic neuron transmit an impulse or the action potential across the synaptic cleft to the postsynaptic neuron? So it is by chemical neurotransmitters. Chemicals called neurotransmitters are involved in the transmission of impulses at the synapse. So in case of electrical synapse, directly neuron membrane attach and impulse transmit directly from one neuron to other neuron. But in case of chemical synapse, there is a gap or synaptic cleft between these two neuron membrane, pre and post synaptic membrane. So uh, here, chemicals called neurotransmitters are involved in transmission of impulse at these synapses. The axon terminals contains vesicles filled with these neurotransmitters. So, at the point or the terminal point of axon membrane or the axon contain vesicles. Terminal end of axon contain vesicles. Those vesicles are filled with neurotransmitters where an impulse or the action potential arrives at the axon terminal. It stimulates the movement of these synaptic vesicles. So this is end part of neuron and this is filled with vesicles. And vesicles are filled with neurotransmitter. And when an action potential is reached at this point, it reaches at this point, then these vesicles, so when an impulse or action potential arrives at the axon terminal, it stimulates the movement of the synaptic vesicle towards the membrane or towards the post synaptic membrane. So this action potential stimulate or push these vesicles towards the axon membrane or the postsynaptic membrane, where these vesicles get fused, where they fuse with the plasma membrane and release their neurotransmitter in the synaptic cleft, where these vesicles here these vesicles fuse with the membrane end and release neurotransmitter their neurotransmitter. The released neurotransmitter binds to the specific receptors, and then neurotransmitter, this released neurotransmitter binds to their specific receptors. Then these neurotransmitter binds to their specific receptors present on the postsynaptic membrane. This binding opens an ion channels allowing the entry of ions, which can generate a new action potential. Then uh, after a neurotransmitter get attached with these receptors, then a new action potential is generated in the uh, post new membrane of neuron. This binding opens an ion channels allowing the entry of ions, which can generate a new potential in the postsynaptic neuron. The new potential developed may be either excitatory or inhibitory. It may be excitatory or inhibitory. Central neural system. The brain is the central information processing organ of our body and act as the command and control system. It controls the voluntary movement. So brain controls the voluntary movement of our body, balance of the body, functioning of vital involuntary organs, example lungs, heart, kidney, etc. Thermoregulation, hunger, thirst, circadian rhythm of 24 hours, activities of several endocrine glands, human behavior. It is also the site of processing vision, hearing, speech, memory, intelligence, emotion, and thoughts. The human brain is well protected by skulls. So, as spinal cord is well protected by vertebral column, as human brain is well protected by the skull. Inside the skull or the cranium part of the skull. Inside the skull, the brain is covered by cranial meninges consisting of an outer layer called dura mater, a very thin middle layer called arachnoid, and an inner layer which is in contact with the brain tissue called pia mater. So, so this is a layer of skin after which layer of cranium, after which another layer is the dura mater, and after it arachnoid, and next layer is the pia mater, which is in close association with the brain tissue. Then here is brain. It is close. Pia mater is in close association with the brain tissue. So skin, cranium, pia mater, dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater. So human brain is well protected by a skull. Inside the skull, the brain is covered by cranial meninges consisting of an outer layer called dura mater, a very thin middle layer called arachnoid, and an inner layer which is in contact with the brain tissue called pia mater. The brain can be divided into three major parts, that is forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. So forebrain has two part, that is cerebrum and diencephalon. Diencephalon, that is hypothalamus and thalamus. Forebrain. The forebrain consists of cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus. Cerebrum forms the major part of the human brain. So cerebrum forms the major part of the human brain. A deep cleft divides the cerebrum longitudinally into two halves, which are termed as the left and right cerebral hemisphere. So cerebrum is divided into two parts, that is left and a right hemisphere. So this is cerebrum, part of forebrain. This is diencephalon part and this is cerebrum part. A deep cleft divides the cerebrum longitudinally into two halves, which are termed as the left and right hemisphere. So a deep cleft divides two portion of this hemisphere. The hemisphere are connected by a tract of nerve fiber called corpus callosum, and these hemisphere are connected by this tract of fiber called corpus callosum. The layer of cells which cover the cerebral hemisphere are called cerebral cortex and is thrown into prominent fold. So layer of which have prominent fold, that is upper layer is prominent fold and cover the cerebral hemisphere is called the cerebral cortex. And this capicolism tract of tract of nerve fibers. The layer of cells which cover the cerebral hemisphere is called cerebral cortex and is thrown into prominent fold. The cerebral cortex is referred to as the gray matter. So cerebral cortex is referred to as the gray matter due to its grayish appearance. The neuron cell bodies are concentrated here, giving the color. So grayish appearance because of neuron cell bodies higher concentration. The cerebral cortex contains motor areas, sensory areas, and large regions that are neither clearly sensory nor motor in function. These regions are called association areas. So cerebral cortex have motor areas, sensory areas, and large regions of cerebral cortex is neither sensory nor motor in function. That is, it is association areas are responsible for the complex function like intersensory association, memory, and communication. So it is also an important point. Fibers of the tracts are covered with the myelin sheet, which constitute the inner part of the cerebral hemisphere. So tract fiber are covered with the myelin sheet. So tract fiber are covered with the myelin sheet, which constitute the inner part of cerebral hemisphere. They give an opaque white appearance to the layer and hence is called white matter. So cerebral cortex outer layer is cerebral cortex, that is grayish in appearance, and inner layer which is covered by myelin sheet and outer by cell bodies. So myelin sheet gives it dark opaque white appearance and hence is called white matter. The cerebrum wraps around a structure called thalamus. So cerebrum wraps around a structure called thalamus, which is a major coordinating center for sensory and motor signaling. Another very important part of the brain called hypothalamus lies at the base of the thalamus. So this region is thalamus and lies at the base of thalamus is hypothalamus. So these two parts are of dancephalon. The hypothalamus contains number of centers which control body temperature, urge for eating, drinking. It also contains several groups of neurosecretory cells which secrete hormones called hypothalamic hormones. So hypothalamus controls body temperature, urge of eating, drinking, etc. And it also contains several groups of neurosecretory cells which secrete hormones called hypothalamic hormones. The inner part of the cerebral hemisphere and a group of associated deep structure called like amygdala and hippocampus. So this is inner part of cerebral hemisphere like amygdala and hippocampus form a complex structure called the limbic lobe or limbic system. So amygdala plus hippocampus form limbic lobe or limbic system. Limbic system. Along with the hypothalamus, it is involved in the regulation of sexual behavior, expression, and emotional reaction. Example: excitement, pleasure, rage, fear, and motivation. So this limbic lobe plus limbic system plus hypothalamus, hypothalamus involved in these behavior like sexual behavior, expression of emotional reaction, example excitement, pleasure, rage, fear, and motivation. So next topic is midbrain. So the midbrain is located between thalamus, hypothalamus, or the dancephalon part of the forebrain and pons of the hindbrain. So hindbrain have three parts, that is pons, cerebellum, and medulla. And midbrain is located between dancephalon and pons of hindbrain. So here it is the midbrain that is located between dancephalon part of forebrain and pons part of hindbrain. Here midbrain is located. So that's why we call it a midbrain because it is located in the mid section of the these two parts of the brain. A canal called the cerebral aqueduct passes through the midbrain. So a canal called cerebral aqueduct, a canal that is name is cerebral aqueduct, is passes through the midbrain The dorsal portion of the midbrain consists mainly of four round swelling lobes called corpora quadrigemina. So, at dorsal portion of midbrain, there is four round swellings like structure. Uh, these like structure, four round swelling like structure, that is corpora quadrigemina, is at the dorsal portion of the midbrain. Hindbrain. The hindbrain comprises pons, cerebellum, and medulla, also called medulla oblongata. Pons consist of fiber that interconnect different regions of the brain. Cerebellum has very convoluted surface in order to provide the additional space for many neurons. The medulla of the brain is connected to the spinal cord. The medulla contains centers which control respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, and gastric secretion. Three major regions make up the brainstem, that is midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Brainstem forms the connection between brain and the spinal cord. So, hindbrain has three parts, that is pons, cerebellum, here so many tract of nerve fibers located, medulla or medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata connect to spinal cord, and the brainstem is pons, medulla, and midbrain. So, brainstem is midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. And medulla of the brain connect to spinal cord. The medulla contains center for respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, gastric secretion. This is important point. So learn it. So this chapter ended with this topic. Hope you understand clearly. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you have any doubt, feel free to ask in the comment box. Thank you very much. We will meet in the next video, yeah, or in upcoming videos. So bye bye, thank you very much.